The galactic survey vessel, Varakis, drifted silently through the void, its scanners sweeping the endless darkness. Commander Rylos Varak stood at the helm, arms crossed, his eyes locked onto the massive viewing screen. For months, they had been mapping uncharted systems, cataloging planets, and searching for new resources. It was routine work until today. A warning alert flashed across the main console. "Commander," said Lieutenant Parn, his voice tight with confusion, "we just picked up something strange." Rylos turned. "Strange how?" Parn's fingers flew over his controls. "It's a signal, buried deep in the radiation of this sector." Rylos frowned. "A distress beacon." Parn shook his head. "No, sir. It's old. Very old. But there's something else." He hesitated. "It's not just a signal. It's a warning." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Warnings were never a good sign. Rylos narrowed his eyes. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered, and a series of ancient symbols appeared, written in a language long forgotten. The ship's AI immediately began translating. The result made Rylos's blood run cold. "Do not appwh. This world is a death trap." Silence fell over the bridge. Parn exhaled slowly. "That's not something you see every day. A world lost to time." Navigator Kelrin Jex leaned forward. "The signal is coming from a planet not listed in any of our charts." His hands moved over the holographic controls. "It's deep within this system, orbiting a G-type star." Rylos's stomach twisted. "A yellow star." Kelleran nodded. "Exactly like the one in our ancient restricted archives." Every species in the Galactic Council knew about the forbidden records, planets that were never meant to be visited, worlds spoken of only in whispers. And one name stood above all the rest. Kelleran's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, it matches the coordinates of Earth." The bridge fell into an eerie silence. Earth. A world so dangerous that it had been erased from star maps. A planet spoken of only in legends and nightmares. Unraveling the mystery. Rylos straightened, forcing himself to stay calm. "Pull up any historical records." Kelleran hesitated before tapping a sequence on his panel. The display shifted, revealing a fragmented file, heavily redacted, and full of gaps. Parn read it aloud. "Classified as Category 14 Death World, one of the most hostile environments ever recorded." He glanced at Rylos. "Sir, the Council's planetary danger scale only goes up to Class 12. Rylos's chest tightened. Class 12 was reserved for planets so extreme, no known species could survive there. Volcanic hellscapes, toxic atmospheres, frozen wastelands, but none of them had ever reached Class 14. "Wait," Kelleran muttered, scrolling further. "There's more." The final line made everyone freeze. "Primary inhabitants, human." The decision. Rylos felt a chill creep down his spine. Humans. They weren't just a myth. They weren't just some ancient warning story. Parn swallowed hard. "Sir, the Council doesn't talk about Earth. The fact that this file even exists means someone went through great effort to bury it." Kelleran nodded. "And now, we're the first ones in centuries to find it." Rylos inhaled deeply. This wasn't just another mission. This was something far bigger, something the Council didn't want anyone to know. He looked at the crew, their faces tense with uncertainty. "We have two choices," he said. "We can leave. Pretend we never saw this." Parn's grip tightened on his console. "And the other option." Rylos's voice was steady. "We investigate." Breaking the silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, Kelleran exhaled. "Sir, if Earth is really a death world, and if humans are real, what if the warning is true?" Rylos met his gaze. "Then we need to find out why." He turned to his pilot. "Set a course." The engines hummed to life. As the Varakis moved forward, the ancient warning still blinked on their screen, A final, silent message. Do not approach. UHAVBEN warned. But it was already too late. They were heading straight for the most dangerous planet in the universe, and they had no idea what awaited them. The Veracruz glided through the darkness of space, its sleek hull reflecting the dim glow of the distant yellow sun. The crew had seen many strange worlds before, but none carried the weight of this one. Commander Rylos Varick stood at the helm, watching as the planet came into view. At first glance, it looked almost ordinary, a blue and green world, swirling with white clouds. Yet, an eerie feeling settled over the crew. This was Earth, the most dangerous planet ever recorded. Approaching a Dith world. Scanning the atmosphere, said Lieutenant Parn, his hands trembling slightly over the controls. A few moments passed before the results came in. His brow furrowed. This doesn't make sense. Rylos turned. What do you mean? Parn exhaled. The atmospheric composition is perfect for carbon-based life. Oxygen levels are high, gravity is within normal range, and there are vast bodies of liquid water. By all accounts, this should be a paradise. Kelrin Jex, the navigator, frowned. Then why was it classified as a Class 14 death world? Rylos didn't answer. Because deep down, he knew something was wrong. Something they couldn't see. A ghost planet. As they descended into the upper atmosphere, the ship's sensors detected something even stranger. Parn's voice cracked. Sir, I'm detecting no advanced technology. No power grids, no spaceports, no satellites. It's like no one is here. A dead world. Kelren adjusted the scanners. Wait, I'm picking up something. Massive cities. But they're overgrown. Structures reaching to the sky, yet abandoned. Rylos's stomach tightened. Are you telling me that an entire civilization just disappeared? Parn hesitated, or something wiped them out. A heavy silence filled the bridge. Rylos clenched his fists. We need to see it for ourselves. Prepare for landing. Touchdown in a graveyard. The Veracruz broke through the thick clouds, revealing a sprawling city beneath them. Towering skyscrapers stretched toward the sky, their glass facades shattered. Vines crawled over abandoned highways. Nature had reclaimed the land. Kelren whispered, It's like the world just stopped. The ship settled onto an empty plaza, its landing struts sinking slightly into cracked pavement. Dust swirled around them as the engines cooled. Rylos took a deep breath. Arm yourselves. We go in together. The airlock hissed open. Footsteps in the ash. The crew stepped onto the surface, their boots crunching against debris. A strange stillness hung in the air. Kelren ran a scanner. No signs of life. Parn knelt near a rusted vehicle. He brushed away dirt, revealing strange markings, letters in an ancient human language. What happened here? He muttered. Then something moved. Rylos froze. A shadow flickered between the buildings. Did you see that? Kelren whispered. Rylos's voice was tight. We're not alone. A sharp crack echoed through the air. Something was watching them. Something was waiting. The ruins of the city loomed over them like ancient, forgotten giants. Broken glass crunched underfoot as the crew of the Veracruz moved cautiously through the overgrown streets. Commander Rylos Varick held his weapon tight, eyes scanning every shadow. His instincts screamed at him. They were being watched. Kelren Jex, the navigator, whispered, This place is too quiet. No animals, no wind, just nothing. Parn adjusted his scanner. Still no life signs, but his face twisted in confusion. I'm picking up strange movement patterns, like something is here, but the sensors can't lock onto it. A heavy silence followed. Then, a sharp clang echoed from a nearby alley. The crew whipped around. Something had moved. The first encounter. Rylos signaled for silence. Weapons ready. Slowly, he stepped forward, his breath steady. The alley was narrow, the walls covered in vines and decay. Then a shadow flickered. His heart pounded. "Come out." No response. Kelleran swallowed. "Sir, maybe we should." Suddenly, a blur of motion erupted from the darkness. Rylos barely had time to react. A massive figure leaped from the shadows, landing just meters away. It was humanoid, 7 feet tall, muscular, fast, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. A human, a species not extinct. The crew stood frozen. Parn whispered, "Impossible." The figure's face was hardened, his skin covered in old scars. His dark eyes studied them with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. Rylos raised a cautious hand. "We are explorers. We mean no harm." The human didn't respond. He simply stared, silent, unblinking. Then, in a voice rough from years of isolation, he spoke one word. "Leave." Kelleran blinked. You speak Galactic Common." The human's eyes narrowed. "Leave. Now." Parn stepped forward. "Wait. We need to understand what happened here. Where is everyone?" For the first time, the human's expression shifted. His jaw clenched. A flicker of something dark crossed his face. Then he said 2 words that made their blood run cold. "They're coming." The warning. Rylos's grip tightened. "Who's coming?" The human looked past them, scanning the ruined city. His muscles tensed. "They know you're here," he muttered. "You have to run." Kelleran shook his head. Who knows?" The human took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The ones who did this." A chill ran through the crew. Before Rylos could ask anything else, the human moved. Fast. He turned and vanished into the shadows. The hunters arrive. Silence. Then, a low hum filled the air. Parn checked his scanner. His face drained of color. "Commander, we've got multiple inbound signals." Kelleran's voice trembled. "But we scanned this area." There was nothing. Rylos gritted his teeth. Something was coming. And it wasn't human. A deep guttural growl echoed through the city. Then, from the darkness, glowing red eyes blinked to life. The crew was not alone. The air felt heavier, as if the city itself had begun to breathe. Commander Rylos Varric tightened his grip on his weapon. The red eyes blinked in the darkness. First 2, then 4, then too many to count. Parn's scanner flickered wildly. "I don't understand. These readings don't make sense." Kelleran took a step back. What are those things?" A deep guttural growl rumbled from the shadows. Then the figures moved. A predator's advance. The shapes emerged from the ruins, stepping into the faint light. Tall, skeletal, twisted. Their elongated limbs ended in razor-sharp claws. Their heads were featureless, except for the burning red eyes. And worst of all, they'd moved like hunters. Kelleran's voice was barely above a whisper. "They're not human." Parn swallowed. "Then what the hell are they?" Rylos made a decision. Run. Now. A desperate escape. The crew broke into a sprint, boots slamming against the cracked pavement. The creatures chased them immediately. Fast. Too fast. Parn glanced back, and his stomach dropped. "They're gaining on us." A terrifying screech split the air. The closest creature lunged, claws outstretched. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The creature's head snapped backward, its body collapsing mid-stride. The crew skidded to a stop. On a rooftop above them, the human survivor stood, rifle smoking. He didn't hesitate. He fired again, dropping another creature. Precise. Efficient. Deadly. Then he shouted, "Move into the underground." The crew didn't argue. The human leaped from the roof, landing with inhuman grace. He sprinted ahead and threw open a rusted metal hatch in the street. In. Now. Rylos was the first to drop into the darkness below, followed by the others. The human jumped in last, slamming the hatch shut just as the creatures reached it. Heavy thuds pounded above. Claws scraped against metal. Then, silence. Parn panted, chest heaving. What the hell were those? The human locked eyes with Rylos. His voice was calm but firm. The reason Earth became a death world. The dark truth. The crew slowly took in their surroundings. They were in an ancient underground shelter, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Rusted equipment sat against the walls. Rylos steadied himself. What were those creatures? The human's gaze darkened. They weren't always like that, he said. They were human once. Kelran felt his blood run cold. That's impossible. The human shook his head. No, it's what happens when you're left to survive on a world that wants to kill you. Silence. Then, Rylos asked the question that had haunted them since they arrived. What happened to Earth? The human exhaled slowly. His next words sent chills through them all. The Galactic Council happened. The underground shelter was silent, except for the faint hum of old generators. The crew of the Veracruz stood frozen, processing the human survivor's words. The Galactic Council happened. Commander Rylos Varric narrowed his eyes. Explain. The human's expression was cold. You shouldn't be here. Parn exhaled. We didn't come to fight. We came to learn. The human let out a hollow chuckle. Learn. Then let me tell you a story. The Council's betrayal. The human leaned against an old supply crate. His eyes, dark and hollow, stared at nothing. Earth wasn't always like this, he began. We were a young species, eager to explore. Strong. Clever. Survivors. Kelran swallowed. Then what happened? The human's fists clenched. The Council decided we were too dangerous. The words hung in the air like a curse. Rylos frowned. That doesn't make sense. The Council exists to protect civilizations, not destroy them. The human's laughter was bitter. That's what they tell you. He took a slow breath. They feared us. Parn's hands trembled. Why? The human's eyes locked onto him. Because we don't break. The extinction attempt. The human continued, voice heavy with rage. They couldn't control us, so they did what they do to every species they fear. They quarantined Earth, cut us off from trade, technology, and aid. They thought we'd collapse, that we'd fall into war, starve, and die off quietly. His jaw tightened, but we didn't. Kelran took a step forward. Then what? The human's voice dropped to a whisper. They escalated. A chill ran through the crew. They sent machines, biological weapons, nanoviruses designed to rewrite our DNA. They turned our own against us. Those things up there, the monsters. That was the Council's doing. Parn felt his stomach turn. They created those things. The human's lips curled into a grim smile. They tried to destroy us. But Earth fought back. A planet that refused to die. The human gestured around the bunker. They underestimated us. They thought humanity was weak, that we would surrender. But they didn't understand. His eyes burned with something primal. They didn't understand Earth. Kelran's voice was barely above a whisper. What do you mean? The human smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Earth isn't just a death world. It's a crucible. It burns the weak and forges the strong. Silence. Then he stood, grabbing a rusted rifle from the wall. The Council thought we'd die. Instead, we evolved, adapted, became something they couldn't predict. He turned to Rylos, and now they're afraid of what we've become. The final warning. Parn swallowed hard. If what you're saying is true, why haven't they finished the job? The human exhaled. Because they lost control. Their own weapons turned against them. Earth became something even they couldn't contain. Rylos felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Kelran whispered, "Then why are you still here?" The human met his gaze. Because someone has to warn the next fools who come here. He stepped forward, his face unreadable. I gave you a chance to leave. Now it's too late. Rylos frowned. What do you mean? The human's voice was cold. They know you're here, and they're coming. The underground shelter suddenly shook, dust raining from the ceiling. A low, unnatural hum filled the air, deep, vibrating, almost alive. Commander Rylos Varric turned to the human. Who's coming? The survivor's jaw clenched. The Council's enforcers. They return every few years to make sure nothing is left. Kelran paled. But they failed. Humans survived. The human smirked, but there was no humor in it. Exactly. And they don't like unfinished work. Another rumble. The ground cracked. Then, a voice echoed through the bunker, metallic and cold. Non-compliant species detected. Commencing eradication protocol. The Council's last mistake. Rylos's heart pounded. We have to move. Now. Parn checked his scanner. Multiple signatures incoming. Heavy weapons. They're not here to talk. The human was already moving. Follow me, if you want to live. Without waiting, he ran deeper into the bunker. The crew followed. Above them, explosions shook the ruins. Kelran gasped. They're bombing the city. The human didn't slow down. Standard Council tactic. They'd erase everything. No evidence. No survivors. Rylos gritted his teeth, but this time, they were wrong. This time, survivors were ready. The resistance awakens. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber. The crew froze. Hundreds of humans stood waiting. Scared. Armed. Alive. Kelran's voice trembled. There are more of you. The first human turned to face them. You didn't think I was alone, did you? Rylos scanned the crowd. How did you survive all these years? A new voice spoke up. A woman, her face hardened by war. By fighting. She stepped forward, gripping an old but deadly Council plasma rifle. We've been waiting for this day. Parn blinked. What do you mean? The woman smirked. The Council came to finish the job. This time, we're sending them home in pieces. The final stand. Above them, the Council's forces landed. Their mechanical voices echoed through the ruins. All remaining humans are to be neutralized. They *** descended like gods of war, *** armored, armed, and ruthless. But this time, Earth was ready. The human turned to Rylos. You wanted the truth. He loaded his rifle, eyes burning with fire. Now you get to see how humanity fights back. The ruins above burned. Smoke and fire painted the sky. The Galactic Council's enforcers descended like a relentless storm. Drones, war machines, and armored troops flooding the streets. But this time, Earth was ready. The underground bunker shook as the survivors rushed to their battle positions. Weapons were checked. Traps were armed. The war for Earth was about to begin. Commander Rylos Varric and his crew stood frozen. They had come here as explorers. Now, they were witnesses to something far greater. The human turned to Rylos, gripping his rifle. You came looking for answers. Now you get to see what happens when you push humanity too far. The battle begins. Above, the Council forces advanced. Their mechanical voices echoed through the ruins. Exterminate all hostile life forms. The first wave of drones swept through the streets, scanning for survivors. Their laser cannons powered up, preparing to reduce the ruins to ash. And then, Earth struck back. Hidden turrets roared to life, cutting through the air with plasma fire. Explosions ripped through the Council's front lines. Drones fell from the sky, crashing into the rubble. The surviving humans emerged from the ruins, weapons blazing. They fought like demons, fast, relentless, precise. They had nothing left to lose. Kelran watched in stunned silence. They're winning. The unbreakable spirit. The Council's war machines pushed forward. Towering mechs stomped through the ruins, their cannons glowing with lethal energy. One survivor, an older soldier, charged straight at them. His body was battered, his armor rusted, but his eyes burned with defiance. He planted explosives at the mech's feet and smiled as the fire consumed him and the machine. Parn's breath caught in his throat. There, sacrificing themselves. The human beside them spoke without emotion. That's why the Council fears us. The turning point. Despite the Council's firepower, the humans kept coming. They fought like a species born from war, raised in chaos, and forged by extinction itself. And the Council's forces. They hesitated. For the first time, they hesitated. And in that moment, the humans struck the killing blow. With one last, desperate push, the survivors overran the Council's remaining forces. The skies erupted in fire as their warships retreated. They had lost. A new beginning. The battle was over. The Council had been defeated. Rylos and his crew stood in the aftermath, surrounded by the ruins of a war they never knew existed. Kelran whispered, "This wasn't just survival. This was revenge." The human looked at them, his expression unreadable. No, this was justice. Rylos exhaled, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. The Council had lied. They had tried to erase humanity. And yet, Earth still stood. Humanity still stood. And now, the galaxy would learn what happens when you try to kill the unkillable. They had feared Earth for centuries. Now, they would fear its return.